Dre all day.
You are now tuned in to the show where you learn the discipline to show up day after day to do the work, the confidence to put yourself out there boldly and authentically, and the mental toughness to continue showing up, doing the work, putting yourself out there even when the success you've expected to achieve has yet to be achieved. And on top of all this, you get a huge dose of personal initiative, which is the go-getter energy that moves me, you, and everyone else out there to go make things happen instead of waiting for things to happen. We put all this together in one package. What you get is the mindset, the method, the philosophy, the book, the show known as Work on Your Game. My name is Dre Baldwin, also known as Dre All Day, and welcome to the show. And today's topic is why to do things now. Today's topic is really about personal initiative. This is about building that momentum, which we've talked about in several episodes here on the show. Is understanding that your nature as a human being, all of us, our nature is to procrastinate. In other words, not to just put things off just because, or to not do the things that we want to do because we're lazy. But by procrastinate, what I'm explaining is human beings are designed to conserve energy. By our wiring as people, going back to our caveman days, so to speak, as they say, we would save our energy for the times that we actually needed it, the life and death situations, such as we had to run away from a saber-toothed tiger or some enemy cave person who was trying to kill us, or we had to hunt down the animal that would become our dinner for that night. And if we didn't hunt down that animal, we would starve to death and our families would starve to death. Those were our life and death situations. So we are wired as human beings to conserve our energy until or unless we get into these life or death, fight or flight situations. The challenge with us these days, since most of us on a day-to-day basis aren't in any life or death, fight or flight situations, not anything where we would face any real life-threatening consequences most of the time on a day-to-day basis. Therefore, we are wired to not use that energy at all because we're not facing any life-threatening situations. This is where the procrastination comes from. We are conserving our energy. Again, unconsciously, we're conserving our energy to save it for when we got to run for our lives, whether running after somebody or running away from somebody. But since we never had to do that, we're conserving this energy that never actually gets used. So this is how it goes for a lot of people, that they have energy, they have skills, they have abilities. You have all these resources that never get utilized simply because we're waiting for that moment when we get to do it. When that big moment happens and then everything, we have all this reason to get everything out of us. The moment never comes. So we end up procrastinating throughout our entire lives. We're waiting for the moment when it makes sense to fill in the blank, whatever that thing happens to be. Then that thing never actually occurs, and then we don't end up doing anything. Any of you know what that feels like? Maybe not for your whole life. I mean, you haven't died yet, but you ever felt like you've been waiting, let me delay, let me hold off on this, let me get to it when I get to it, and then the opportunity for whatever reason is no longer available. The time is never there for you to do it, or a whole bunch of time has passed, whatever you consider to be a whole bunch, and you haven't done a damn thing. Any of you know what that feels like? I would assume that some of you know exactly what I'm talking about, because if none of you knows what I'm talking about, then I made a really bad decision in coming up with this as today's topic. So I'm hoping that I'm right, that some of you know exactly what I'm talking about here. This procrastination, that we put things off and not done things when we see the opportunity, or even when we get the idea to do something. We hold off on doing stuff until or unless we have to, or until a circumstance forces us to. The challenge is, number one, if we wait till a circumstance forces us to do things, then we're in the same boat as everybody else. And if you plan on doing the same thing that everybody else is doing, then nothing I say on this show is going to help you, because the things that I tell you on this show will get you ahead of what everybody else is doing. So if you want to be equal and even with everybody else, what you should do is not listen to this, because nothing I say is going to help you achieve that goal. Everything I say is going to help you go above and beyond that. So if you want to be like everybody else, then you can continue to wait until circumstances force you into action. That's one thing. And the other thing is, oftentimes the circumstance never occurs. The circumstance that gives you the quote permission, close quote, to finally take that action that you've been thinking about for months, years, weeks, that circumstance never occurs. Therefore, you never get the quote permission, close quote, to do the thing. Therefore, you never actually do it. And then you die with a whole bunch of regrets on your deathbed of all the things that you did not do. You thought about them, but you didn't actually do them. Now, if you want to be that person, then listen, turn this off and just wait until you die, and then you can have all those regrets. And maybe your grandchild or somebody can write a book about you. But if you plan on actually doing these things before you die, while you're still alive, and we don't know how much time any of us has individually, and I suggest you pay close attention to what I'm going to talk about here in today's episode. This topic is going to force you to go against your human nature and move yourself to action, even when nothing and no one is forcing you to action. The people who can do this on a regular basis are the exceptional individuals in this world. Now, what did we talk about in a recent episode? I told you that to be good means to be acceptable, meaning you can do, you're good enough, or I shouldn't use the word in the definition. You're acceptable, you're competent, you're adequate. That's what good means. And to be great means to be exceptional, meaning you're an exception to what is normal. You're an exception to what everybody else is doing. You're an exception to maybe even what you expect of yourself. If you want to be the exceptional individual, one thing that can set you apart from everybody to be exceptional, move yourself to action, even when there is no circumstance or person or situation forcing you to action. You are forcing yourself into it. Point number one, today's topic, once again, is why to do things now. Understand something. If you want to be in a position of leadership in life, anywhere in life, this could be leadership of yourself, leadership in your family, leadership at your job, at school, on your sports team, leadership anywhere, you must have the habit of moving yourself to action. This is an easy shortcut to put yourself in a position of leadership. It's easy. It's easy for you to understand. It may not be easy for you to enact, and we're going to get into that, but it is easy for you to understand. Everyone understands the whole concept of just do things now. You have an idea, do it now. This is due next Thursday. Why don't you just do it today? Why do you got to wait till Wednesday night? Why don't you just do it right now? This is an easy habit, simple and easy habit for you to cut to the front of the line of leadership in life. Just move yourself to action while everybody else is waiting for the circumstance to force them to action. If you move yourself first, think about this on a practical level. If you're the first one to move to action when there's 20 other people in the room, they all know something needs to be done, but there's no rush, and you move yourself to actually get it done now, you are literally the leader. You're literally the first one moving, and everybody else who does it after you, what are they doing? They're following you. You went first. The person who goes first, the person who moves first, the person who acts first is literally the leader. And everyone else, even if they act after you, even if they're better than you, you are still the leader because you're the one that went first. They couldn't move until they saw you moving first. Even if you don't have the skills or the credibility to lead a group, whatever those skills or credibility may be, whatever requirements have been made or that you're arbitrarily making up in your mind, moving first and acting now will get you noticed, even if your skills won't get you noticed. Even if your talent doesn't get you noticed, even if you have no resume, if you're the person who moves first, people are going to start paying attention to you. I did a virtual mentors episode on Puff Daddy, Sean Combs, the hip hop impresario. And there was a story that his first boss told. His first boss is a guy named Andre Harrell, and Puff he wanted to get into the music industry, so he got hooked up with an internship at this company called Uptown Records in New York by a rapper by the name of Heavy D. Some of y'all remember Heavy D from back in the 80s and the 90s. He's passed away a few years back, but Heavy D was from the same neighborhood that Puff Daddy, before he was Puff Daddy, was living in. And Puff knew who he was. Obviously, he was a very famous rapper. And Puff went to Heavy D, asked him, can you help me get on in the industry? Heavy D introduced him to Andre Harrell, who was the guy who was running things at Uptown Records. So Andre Harrell gave Puff Daddy an unpaid internship. Puff Daddy wanted that internship so bad, he would take the train from Washington, D.C., where he was a student at Howard University, all the way up to New York for, that's a 3 hour train ride every week, just so he could work at his internship that he wasn't even getting paid for. That should be a hint to some of you newbies out there, some of you amateurs out there who want to get your foot in the door in some industry. Are you willing to make those kind of investments, those kind of sacrifices to get your foot in the door? And if you have skills, it'll show, because look, Puff Daddy became Puff Daddy. And what happened is, the story Andre Harrell tells is when Puff Daddy worked there, like his first day, Andre Harrell handed Puff Daddy a cassette tape. Or he wasn't Puff Daddy, it was called him Sean. He handed Sean a cassette tape and said, I need you to take this tape down to this office, it was like 10, 15 blocks away. And any of you live in New York or been in New York City, you know that 10, 15 blocks is a healthy little trip, right? It would take maybe 30 to 60 minutes, depending on how fast you walk. So Andre Harrell hands the tape to Sean, tells him take the tape down. This is like I don't even know what you call this. He was just like a little petty interns. He's giving him this little busy work type of job that anybody could be doing. Andre Harrell was paying no attention to this guy. So Andre Harrell says, I handed Puff the tape, told him where to take it, and then I picked up the phone because I had a phone call that I needed to make. So Andre Harrell gets on his phone call, and by the time he hangs up the phone to end his phone call, and it didn't take that long. The phone call was maybe 10 minutes, 5 to 10 minutes. By the time he hangs up the phone, young Sean Combs is running back into the office. He had a tie on. His tie was like flat back over his shoulder because he had been moving so fast. And Andre Harrell says, wait, how the hell did you get down to that office and drop off that tape and get back here so fast? And Sean said to Andre Harrell, his boss, he said, sir, I ran there and I ran back. And Andre Harrell said, when he said that to me and I saw that he really meant it, this dude really wanted, he was really hungry. I said, all right, this guy's going to be a factor here in this building. He's either going to be a major force who's going to help us go further and go harder because he has this energy, or he's going to be a serious disruption in a bad way because he has all this energy and we don't have any way to contain this guy's energy. So this dude is going to be a factor one way or another. He's going to help us a lot or he's going to hurt us a lot, but he is not going to blend into the wallpaper. And I'm telling you that to explain this point that I'm making here. Puff Daddy, or he wasn't Puff Daddy yet, Sean Combs at that time, he did not have the skills to run anything in that building. He was brand new. He was an intern. He hadn't proven anything. He didn't have the credibility. He had no resume. He was brand new in the game. He only was there because he had begged Heavy D for a job, and Heavy D got him an internship. And Andre Harrell said, all right, I'll just give you a chance, young man, and let's see what you can do. He had no skills, no credibility, but because of his sense of urgency, because of his personal initiative, he got noticed. By who? The main guy. Andre Harrell was the boss. Heavy D was the biggest artist at Uptown. So the two biggest guys in that room knew exactly who Sean was even before he had proven the damn thing. Why? Not because they could see his skills, not because they could see his talent. They couldn't see that he was a diamond in the rough. It was none of that shit. It was because he was moving with such a sense of urgency, so much personal initiative that everybody had no choice but to pay attention to this man. There's nothing stopping you from doing the same thing. Most people in life do things later on or whenever later happens to be. And for most people, we know that later usually equals when, never. But when you do things now, when you're this person who just takes action immediately, even though nothing is forcing you to do so, people will be surprised by the fact that you're doing it. They're like, I actually have somebody next to me who has some goddamn personal initiative. What a pleasant surprise. You will separate yourself from 97% of people just by doing this. And if you actually happen to have some skill, you'll separate yourself from the other 2% of people and you'll be the only 1% left. You did it already. You did something because nobody else actually is doing it. Combine that with just a little bit of skill. That'll take care of the other 2%. 97% will be taken care of just by the fact that you move first. Point number 2. Today's topic is why to do things now in life. I want you to understand something. So that was understanding number 1, what I gave you here in point number 1, that to be in a position of leadership, that's an easy shortcut to it. Here's the second understanding you need to get about doing things now in life. The sooner you do things, the sooner you get feedback, and the sooner you get activity knowledge, and the sooner you can move on to whatever the next step may be. See, oftentimes in life, we don't take action because we don't know something or you're unsure about something. So you don't do anything because you're like, well, I don't have the information, or I'm not quite sure this is going to work out. I don't know how this is going to turn out, so I'm not going to do anything. But I want you to understand something. Experience is the best and most accurate teacher out there. I think I'm a pretty good teacher. I think I'm a pretty good explainer of concepts and ideas and giving you examples from my life and from the lives of other people as I'm doing right here. But I think experience can teach you even better than I can teach you. I can plant the seeds in your mind, but you want to water those seeds. You got to take some action and let experience, allow those seeds to germinate. They got to provide the sunlight. Right? So you got to go out there and get the experience. If you don't know what you're doing, it's probably because you've never done anything before. If you go do something, you may still not know what you're doing, but you know a little bit more than you knew before. Then the next time you take action, you know a little bit more. Then the next time you know a little bit more. Then you can combine that with listening to somebody like myself, or reading books, or going to conferences, or having a mentor, or hiring a coach. And then you get more and more information. You got to combine the knowledge, as we say, book knowledge, quote unquote. That's the knowledge that you get from observing and listening and paying attention and thinking. That's the quote book knowledge, close quote. The street knowledge, or street smarts, as some people like to say, that means you're actually out there in the street doing something. It doesn't have to be a street. It could be an office. It could be a library. It could be a school. It could be a business. It could be the internet. But being out there actually doing something, that's the knowledge that you combine. So you don't want to just be book smart or street smart. You want to be a combination of both. See, a street smart individual is a person who has done a whole lot of stuff, but they haven't taken the time to think about it, to marinate on it, or to look for the right information from the right sources. That's not a good strategy either, because it's going to take you way too much time to get the information, to get the right information. And you don't want to be the book smart person either, because you're just sitting in a room thinking and learning and gathering all this information, yet you never put it into action. You don't want to be on the extreme ends of either one of these. You need a combination of both. Get the information from the right sources and combine it with some actual experience. When you put those together, that's when you get the magic formula. The most accurate teacher out there, the best teacher out there that will never guide you wrong, is experience. So when you do things now, you immediately get taught by the best teacher, which is experience, and that's the best education there is. And then from there, just because you did it doesn't mean you did it right. You can either fix things and go back and do it again, or you can move on to whatever your next step is. And the next thing may be the thing that you really want to do. So you might need to go through a step that you don't really feel like going through, like we talked about in the chapter on hustling, understanding the game, to get to the thing that you really do want to go through. You might not like studying, for example, but you want to pass the test because you want to graduate or you want to be eligible. So you may have to go through a couple of steps that you don't really love in order to get to the step you really want to get to. But until you do those early steps, you can never get to the final step. You can't make yourself eligible to play sports in college if you don't study for the test and then actually go pass the test. So even though the only thing you really want to do is go play your sport, before that you got to get eligible. Before that you got to pass the test. Before that you got to study for the test. So the sooner you start, the sooner you can get to where you actually want to be, right? Everybody understands that. Point number 3. Today's topic is why to do things now in life instead of doing things later. The reason why you want to do things now is that it keeps you active. Idle minds are a great waste of resources. Idle bodies, they rot and decay and they fall apart. You ever seen any person who's just been so idle as far as their physical person that their body starts to break down? And sometimes people's bodies literally break down. Their bones start breaking. They get injured more easily. If you look at their physical stature, look at their posture, they are slumped over. You ever see somebody who is a little bit too old for their body to look the way that it looks? I mean, not old, too young. They're too young for their body to start looking old. You know how that happens? Because their body has been idle. They're not using their body. So their shoulders are slumped over, their knees, their legs, they don't seem to be able to stand up straight. They can't hold their head up straight. Everything is rounded down. Everything seems to be angling towards the ground. All right, that's not a good thing. And if you have plants or flowers in a garden or plants in your house, you'll notice something, that plants tend to grow in the direction of the sunlight that they're being fed. So any plant that gets sunlight, so if you have a plant and the sun comes from the left of the plant, then the plant tends to grow. Whatever the flowers are, they tend to grow in the direction of wherever that sun is coming from. And if you were to move the plant or change the angle of the plant or change where it's getting the sun from, it would start growing in the direction of the sun. It's the same thing with us human beings. Whatever we tend to be doing, that's the direction our bodies tend to move. So if you see a person who's slumped over and it seems like their whole body is angling towards the ground, you know what? That's where they're trying to go, unconsciously. They're trying to go down into that ground. All right. And somebody's going to dig a 6-foot hole that'll fit them nice and comfortably, perfectly right there. And some of you may think that's kind of harsh, but listen, that's just what it is. This is science. People, go look it up. And you see a person who tends to have their head up, their eyes up, chest out, looking forward, moving forward. They seem to have a purpose. You don't even know who they are. You never even heard them talk. You can just tell by their physical posture that this person knows where they're going, and wherever it is somewhere. Why? Because that's the direction that they're focused on. Idle minds waste resources. You can't see when a person has an idle mind, but if you talk to somebody for 5 minutes, you can tell if they got anything up in between their ears or if they don't. True or not true. And idle bodies, you can tell very easily. And they start falling apart. If your body is idle, your body will start telling you. It will tell you by the things that happen to you and the things that you are incapable of how idle your body has been. It will let you know loudly and clearly. And your mind, the same thing. If you ever seen a person with either one, I'm sure you have, you know it's kind of depressing to watch, especially if that person is a little bit too young to be displaying certain symptoms. And I doubt that you want either of the above, an idle mind or an idle body, or at least you don't want an idle mind that's falling apart. You don't want an idle body that starts angling down towards the ground like a plant. If you got a plant that starts angling, the flowers and the blooms, the blossoms start angling down towards the ground, what does that mean? That means that plant is dead, is over. All right, you can't revive. Actually, maybe you can revive a plant. I'm not a botanist, I don't know. When you're in the mindset of doing things now, you keep your brain and your body both actively engaged. The saying is, the mind is a terrible thing to waste, right? A body is a terrible thing to waste also. And let me tell you what's the worst thing to waste? Time. That's why you need to do things now. Point number 4, today's topic is why to do things now in life. Productivity. I mean, you'd be surprised. Actually, you wouldn't be surprised at all. So let me take that back. But every person who I talk to who is a solopreneur or a business owner, entrepreneur, in any way, shape, or form, they own their business. Whether they're doing it by themselves, you have a brick and mortar, you're an influencer, building your brand, you're a freelancer. Almost all of them are searching for higher levels of productivity. And if you fall into one of those categories, you are looking for ways to be more productive. How can I get more done in the same amount of time? Listen, I'm looking for ways to get more done in the same amount of time. Doesn't necessarily have to be me doing it, but I have to coordinate what's getting done and how much time it's going to take to get done and why it's getting done and what results that's going to produce. We're all looking for that. Many of us are looking for that. Many people these days are on this ever continuing pursuit of productivity. Definition of productivity is the state or quality of producing something. Understand something. You cannot produce anything if you're not doing anything. Can you produce something without doing anything? No, you can't. You have to do something. Even to produce an idea, you have to think. Even if you got 20 people working for you, you have to coordinate those 20 people. You have to find who are those 20 people, what each of them is doing, how does one person's job connect with the other person's job, and you might have to watch over them. Somebody might have a question. You got to organize and delegate with those people. You still have to do something for them to do something. You cannot produce anything without doing anything. So this habit of doing things now is the best thing you can have if you are productivity chasing. If you are in the pursuit of productivity, the best thing you can do for yourself is to do things now. Just be smart about what it is you're producing, because you can produce things. You can spend a whole day producing a whole lot of something and it's worth absolutely nothing to you or to the world. So be smart about what it is you're producing. I'll be talking about that in a future episode. I could say that with every episode of the show. Everything connects to everything else. That's why the show is so amazing. I feel sorry for the people who are not listening to this, but let's get back to the point here as we recap today's topic, which is why to do things now. This is about personal initiative. Like we talked about in the episode on momentum. Understand that your nature as a person is to procrastinate. It's just part of our wiring to save our energy for a fight or flight, life or death situation. But since we don't get into life or death situations every day, since we're not in fight or flight every day, we tend to just do nothing. So the people who can do this thing, move themselves to action on a regular basis, you will jump ahead of everybody else in line very easily. Point number 1, understand something. You want to be in a position of leadership. This is an easy shortcut to get there. If you move first, you're literally the leader and everybody else is following you. Most people do things later, whenever later is. When you do things now, people will be surprised by you because you're early, you're doing things when nobody else has done them yet. It separates you from the crowd just because you're doing things first. You don't even have to be good at it. Just because you're doing things first, people will notice you. Point number 2. Here's the second understanding. The sooner you do things, the sooner you get feedback and knowledge, and the sooner you can get to whatever you want to do next. Oftentimes people don't take action because they don't know something or they're unsure about something, but experience is the best, most accurate teacher you can possibly have ever. So when you do things now, you get the best education you can get from the experience. And then you can either fix things and do it again if it's not perfect, which you probably won't be, or you can move on to wherever the next thing is, which may be the thing you really want. So you may not like studying, but you want to pass the test so you can be eligible so you can play your sport. So understand, working backwards as a hustler, the sooner you do the thing you don't want to do, the sooner you can get to the thing you actually do want to do. Point number 3, it keeps you active. Idle minds are a waste of resources. Idle bodies will rot, decay, fall apart, and they'll start angling towards the ground because that's exactly where they're thinking about going. It's depressing to watch. And I don't doubt that you want that. So keep your brain and your body actively engaged because the mind and the body are both terrible things to waste. Point number 4, productivity. Everybody these days is on an ever continuing pursuit of productivity, especially in Western culture. That's a state or quality of producing something. That's what productivity means. You can't produce anything if you're not doing anything. So this habit of doing things now is the best thing you can do if you are a productivity chasing individual. Just be smart about what you're producing. We'll talk about that in a future episode. Work on your game. Dre all day.